Hi, this is Alan from CCW Technology. I wanted to make a real quick video because this is something that comes up a lot, and I received, I guess, what I would classify as a little bit of an unusual message on Facebook, and I think you'll understand when I explain it. Basically, a person messages me and says, "Hey there, I run a small MSP in mid-Michigan, handles a few vet offices. Was wondering if I could pick your brain for a bit about some things. Heck, I'm willing to even pay you for your time, even." And it says the main thing now is they've got a couple clients with some really, really old servers. One's 2008 R2, of course, should have been replaced years ago. Very out of date, not even PCI compliant. I don't know why anyone other than just a pure negligence would be running that still. And one with 2012 R2, which is also out of date. It is September 2023 now when I'm making this video, but it's been out of support for several years and is going to go out of extended support. So when I say out of date, it's out of support, but it still does have the extended support from Microsoft. But still very much in need of being replaced. So he talks about how cost conscious the customers are, which I mean, I think everybody is, right? Everybody running a business doesn't want to spend more money than they have to. But it says, I'm thinking of running a new box running Windows 10 or 11 to act as a server. Curious on your thoughts on running Windows Desktop instead of a full Windows Server install for such a small office running on the AVImark. And I reply, hey, I'm happy to help. It's illegal to use a desktop OS as a server. You can certainly use a desktop PC, meaning hardware different than the operating system, of course. Microsoft doesn't care if you're running it on a server or hardware with redundant drives, with redundant power supplies, with out-of-band management, all those extra things that come with a full server. Or if it's just a desktop PC that you would typically buy at any type of office supply store or online, Amazon, whatever computer store. Microsoft doesn't care. It's all about licensing. What about the operating system? And so I told him that, and then he immediately comes back saying we have to agree to disagree. As many experts do for the sake of argument. But for the sake of argument, first, even a terms of service violation would not make it illegal. Okay, well, let's stop there and talk about what the term illegal means. And if you look at it, and this is not my definition, this is Merriam-Webster, and this is the illegal definition according to law. There is, various definitions for this one. This is not according to or authorized by law, unlawful or illicit. I'm not saying it's illegal in that 12 angry men in black pajamas are going to crash through the business door and put this person in handcuffs and take them away and book them into jail. I am saying it's illegal. It is contrary to authorized law. That is the definition of illegal. Words are important, and we have to use what they actually mean. We can't just make up our own meanings to them to mean illegal, meaning it's a criminal violation that I'm going to call 911. He says it's considered a civil matter, and it's not illegal to violate civil law. Doesn't even make any sense. Why would you even say that? And then he says, secondly, I don't believe it violates the Windows 10 terms of service. Well, if you look at the Windows 10 terms of service, it says one of the restrictions are to use the software as a server or to operate the device as a server, except permitted in Section 2D. Use the server to offer commercial hosting services, make the software available to simultaneous use by more than one user over a network, except as in 2D. The 2D is what most people point out as, oh, but I can use it as a server because of 2D, 2D, 2D. Well, 2D, and the one that is often referenced, and the one here that he's referencing is device connections. You can allow up to 20 other devices to access the software installed on the licensed device. Here's the important part. Solely to use the following software features for personal or internal purposes, like file services, print services, internet information services, internet connection sharing, telephony services on the licensed device. None of that say that you could use it as an AVImark server. AVImark is more than a file share server. It is more than file services. File services means you have documents or Excel spreadsheets or PDFs or JPEGs or something on a shared file share that people in the office are going to use. Now, why would you ever fire up a Windows machine to do that versus just have it on a NAS or something like that, something much easier to maintain? I don't know. Windows would be the wrong thing, in my opinion, to use for that, but legally it says you could do that. AVImark, on the other hand, actually uses what's called a Guardian service that you now have to use. It's mandatory in the latest versions of AVImark. It was optional in earlier versions of AVImark, but highly, highly recommended for speed and performance and everything like that. And so everybody did it because it made AVImark run better. Now it is actually mandatory. AVImark won't run without it. So the whole 20 device limit, the whole 2D section is out the window because that's not what you're doing. You're using it for an AVImark server. I agree. If you were going to use it as a file services only, just sharing files, yes, you could legally use it. I totally agree. That's clearly stated. And then he talks about he's used it as a web server before. Yada yada. It doesn't matter what you've used it before. It matters what we're using it for now. What is the case in point? And so I'm not even sure why all of that matters. And then talks about hardware recommended hardware requirements from AVImark. AVImark's a software company, first of all. They're not an IT company. And that's really important to note because they have absolutely no obligation to protect your interest. They are selling you software. Okay, they're not your IT company. They're not consulting for you. They're not liable for the advice they give you. They're just saying that their software is compatible to be being run on Windows 10 or Windows 11 as a server. I mean, it's kind of like me saying, oh, you want to go into that store and shoplift? I give you permission to go into that store and shoplift. I'm a third party. I have no control over that store or what that store's rules are or what they own. AVImark doesn't control Microsoft. AVImark cannot speak for Microsoft. It is very clear in Microsoft's terms of service what is legal and what's not legal. The fact that a third party, a non-interested party really, because they're only interested in selling their software, is telling you that you can do it is meaningless. So what? It doesn't make any sense. And then he says again, and I don't mean this to be harshly, but this is commonly discussed among IT professionals. Well, what is an IT professional, right? Anyone can call themselves an IT professional. And I would say that anyone who does not know that this is not permitted and says you can do this legally, anybody who gives you permission to do this, by definition, is not an IT professional. They don't even understand the basics of Microsoft licensing. And it says, note that software like QuickBooks also runs exactly like this. Again, I'm not sure what that has anything to do with this. Yes, you can install software. I'm not saying that if you install software on Windows 10 or Windows 11 and use it as a server, it won't work. I am saying that in this particular case with AVImark as the program running the Guardian service, which you now must run in any of the newer versions. Now, maybe they're running a really old version of AVImark. They're not using Guardian. They should be. Um, could they technically use it? Absolutely. I think you could. I think that's foolish. But assuming they're running any modern version of the software using Guardian, or they're using an older version using Guardian, which was highly recommended. I don't know of any clinics that were using AVImark without Guardian previous, which is probably why it's mandatory now. Could you do that? It's really really strange from the standpoint that somebody contacts me and says, "Hey, I don't apparently I don't know the answer to this question. Can you give me your opinion? I want your opinion on what you should do." And I give that opinion, and immediately it's, "You're completely wrong. We have to agree to disagree. I know the answer, and what you're telling me is wrong." That's just bizarre. I can't explain it. I think that they were looking for me to agree with them, and it's weird. You seek out somebody for advice, and then just want them to agree with you, whether you're right or wrong, for the sake of validation. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But something even more important than what I've pointed out is that I have talked to multiple Microsoft licensing professionals. This is what they do for a living. That is their job, is that they license Microsoft products. They have told me, yes, you are correct. You cannot use Windows 10, Windows 11. If that's not enough, I currently, and this is not, I heard from somebody's sister's brother's cousin's friend that a vet clinic is in trouble or being investigated. But I have firsthand knowledge of a vet clinic who believes this exact advice, and they are in a Microsoft audit right now because they took this same advice. They are running Windows 10 or Windows 11 as a server. Microsoft is auditing them because of that. That was the specific reason of the audit. Now, the audits don't always go fast. I don't know what the result of the audit's going to be. I highly doubt that something that triggered an audit, they're going to come back and say, "Oh, well, this triggered the audit, but it's okay to do so." I doubt. Now, whether there's fines or whether they just make them become legal or compliant, I'm not sure. But I do know of a veterinary clinic in this exact scenario being audited because they chose to take the easy path being, hey, somebody's telling me I don't have to spend a lot of money. And there's this bias of taking somebody's advice because it's advice you want to hear, right? When somebody gives you advice you want to hear, it's the answer you want to believe, you're more apt to justify in your mind why that person is logical, why that person is right, why that advice is better than the advice somebody else is giving you that tells you, it's a harder pill to swallow, but it doesn't make it right. And so, anyway, just really, really bizarre. I'm taken aback by it. It's just crazy.